Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now consider the estimates of Executive Council. Does the Honourable First Minister have an opening statement?
Sure.
Okay. The Honourable First Minister.
Thank you, Chair. So it's a great honor to be able to bring forward Budget 2025 to serve the people of Manitoba. The investments in healthcare are significant and what we were elected on to deliver. And the advances towards working with people to help the affordability challenge are real and making a difference for people across Manitoba. It was amazing to take office and to see the price of gas come down for that one glorious moment. It was at 99 cents on January 1, 2024. We brought inflation down at the same time. Of course, went and checked the price of gas yesterday, $1.19. A lot of the places I drove by in my part of town, and it was good to see that we're making a difference for people, everyday people, the average person out there, the average Manitoban. Later today, we'll be going to the public consultation regarding the reopening of the Victoria Emergency Room. This is one of our signature health commitments. I'm proud that many of my MLA colleagues are going to be there to talk to Manitobans about the specific ideas and features and services that they want to see at a reopened Victoria Emergency Room. Now we know that the Victoria Emergency Room was closed under the PCs. It was one of their signature cuts that they made to healthcare. It was a very bad decision, and people in South Winnipeg and surrounding communities like Niverville and LaSalle were very, very happy to see us announce a commitment to reopen this emergency room, along with the two others at the Conch and Seven Oaks. But of course, it takes time to be able to staff up and build these ERs, so we're proceeding in a judicious and manageable fashion. So the VIC is first, and then once we get the VIC ER up and running and we make sure that we're serving the needs of people in South Winnipeg, concurrently reopening and expanding the ER at Eriksdale in the Interlake Eastern Health Region, then we'll of course proceed with the ERs at the Conch and at Seven Oaks. I also want to highlight the extraordinary uncertainty and risk that Donald Trump has presented to our Manitoba economy. Earlier today, I was watching with interest as the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, met with Donald Trump. Of course, Mark Carney received a mandate from Canadians to stand up to Donald Trump and to defend our interests as a country. As the Premier of Manitoba, along with the other leaders of the provinces and territories, I look forward to meeting with Prime Minister Carney tomorrow to strategize about what the next steps are in terms of us ensuring that not only will we follow through on that commitment that we'll never be the 51st state, but also that we'll protect your jobs and we'll protect our economy here in Canada. And when we're talking about the threat of Trump, we know that we need to mention that there's also tariffs coming from the People's Republic of China. And our ag producers here in Manitoba and across Western Canada, as well as fishers in some of the coastal provinces and territories, have been experiencing a lot of challenges from that. So we've been working hard in ensuring that the investments are there in terms of the business risk management programs and investments in diversification of trade, such as with the GATE project here in Winnipeg, to ensure that the ag industry will continue to be the backbone of our great economy for generations to come. So there's a lot of interesting things happening, a lot of exciting things happening, a lot of important projects moving forward, and Budget 2025 is the vehicle that is going to drive us as Manitobans to the next stop on our journey together towards building up this wonderful province into a place that we all love so much. So, very happy to be here with my colleagues from both sides of the aisle, as well as some of the staff who work with us closely on a day-to-day basis. And in the beautiful environs of this room, which has not only Premiers Pauly and Schreier, but also Roblin, and really does kind of speak to some of the great projects that were built up in Manitoba over the years. And now we're proud to take on that mantle and build up some more great projects here in Manitoba to put people to work, to defend our economy, and to power our jobs going into the future. So with that, I'll say miigwech, merci. Thank you very much.
We thank the Honorable First Minister for those comments. Does the Leader of the Official Opposition have an opening statement? The Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. It's good to be here for my first Committee of Supply and my new role of the Leader of the Official Opposition and Leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, now 9 days into the job or 10 days into the job. It's an absolute honor for me to be here. I've had the pleasure of traveling all across Manitoba from before my time in politics as a Blue Bomber and then into politics, and now here as the leader on this campaign. It's time well spent, and I heard from Manitobans their concerns about the economy, about the tariffs, and the impact they're having on businesses, the impact they're having on their lives. Heard from Manitobans about real change, not just press releases and announcements and photo ops. Manitobans are concerned about job losses, recession, and the future of our province. They're concerned about crime in our communities that is currently at its highest level it's ever been. Neighborhoods not only here in Winnipeg, in Brandon, Portage la Prairie, Dauphin, Winkler, Morden, Swan River, and many more. They're concerned about homelessness, the addiction crisis, the rising cost of housing and taxes under this NDP government, and the shortages of quality housing. All of these things I mentioned above were all promises made by this current government to fix. Crime was supposed to be fixed within 100 days of this premier and his NDP government, and we have crime at record levels. Encampments were to be gone in 30 or 60 days with another press release, an announcement, and photo op. And now we hear just yesterday in the chamber that their levels are higher than they've ever been. And the answer by this government, nothing. Attacks, misinformation, misleading Manitobans. We've seen many concerns. I mean, and you can see here that the premier is heckling me in committee. Like, this is embarrassing behavior by the premier. It's disgusting, it's shameful that the premier is allowed the opportunity to heckle me as I'm just simply stating my opening statement. So it's appropriate now, given the situation we're in, we turn to the Committee of Supply and we get answers. Hopefully get some answers from this premier and his staff, which I won't hold my breath for or have high hopes. I welcome the premier and his staff. Look forward to getting some answers. It's what we're elected to do here, is get answers. Anybody can go to question period in the last 2 days and see. I don't think there's one answer by this premier or any of his ministers. Some of them actually don't even know what we're talking about. It's a simple question of a number. How much money have you invested here? No answer. What is your GDP growth target for the premier? No answer. Simple numbers that you should have in a budget. I mean, that's what we're here for. And again, Honorable Chair, again, heckling from members opposite, but seems to be going unnoticed here as well.
The Honorable First Minister.
Just want to point out the leader of the official opposition is reflecting on the chair, which is against the rules.
I'd just like to remind all members to not draw the chair into debate. Does the Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition wish to continue?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Apologize, wasn't aware I was drawing you into debate. I was simply stating a comment that members opposite are heckling, but I will be mindful not to draw the chair into any debates. Rural Manitoba crime rates are higher than Winnipeg's. Northern Manitoba is amongst the highest incidences of violent crime in our country. I speak to this because it's relevant to what we're here to talk about today, and that is whether Manitobans are getting value for the taxpayer dollars and safety under this premier and the NDP cabinet. We are here today to talk about the premier's responsibilities as the president of the Executive Council, his role as Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs, and International Relations, and his role as Minister responsible for Indigenous Reconciliation. All very important portfolios being carried out by Executive Council in the Office of the Premier. So we will be asking some questions today about the makeup of his office to start, his staff, their responsibilities, how he's prioritizing time, and what he's doing to solve these challenges. All high-level, standard, basic questions that in these committee processes standard. And we hope we can get some answers from the Premier and his office before we get down to some other questions. Our economy, our manufacturers, our workers, and our farmers, exporters are all being attacked by Chinese and American tariffs. Our PC team has asked the Premier to work with us on Team Manitoba approaching and addressing these tariffs ahead and threats. And there's no willingness to work across partisan lines, to work for all Manitobans. My colleague from Midland brought forward Bill 227 about removing interprovincial trade barriers. It's ready to go. It's already been introduced. Premier says, yes, he will, but he won't, and he won't, and he will. And we're simply looking for an answer if he will support Bill 227, removing interprovincial trade barriers before Canada Day. We've asked to see a plan. No plan has been tabled by this Premier. So Manitobans are left wondering, what is actually happening? What is the plan? The Finance Minister issued a news release last week talking about rebates from WCB to businesses on tax deferrals to help those impacted by tariffs with liquidity. Tax deferrals is the key word here. I'm not sure if the Premier or anyone else on his side has owned a small business, and I'm sure the Premier will take this opportunity to attack members on this side, and probably namely myself for being a small business owner. Tax deferrals, the business still has to pay those. In a time of uncertainty, in a time of hardship, it's simply a deferral on that. We've asked the Premier for more concrete steps on how to support small businesses, and there hasn't been an answer from this Premier. These WCB rebates would have happened regardless. So it's really a non-announcement by the Finance Minister. Small businesses see this. Manitobans see the smoke and mirrors being portrayed before you. And over the time in committee, we, on this side of the House, will show that this Premier has no plan. This Premier is merely smoke and mirrors. He's not making life more affordable. He's not making life safer. He's not making hospitals better. All of the things that were campaigned on are broken promises. The Finance Minister has alluded to news releases that they want to reduce barriers in trade in Canada, and nothing's been done. Prime Minister Carney said he wants to have trade barriers in Canada removed by Canada Day. The premiers of Nova Scotia, PEI, New Brunswick, Ontario, Alberta, and Saskatchewan have all started to take action to reduce trade barriers and improve labor mobility, and this Premier has stopped the bill before the House to remove them. No real action. A lot of words today in the chamber, no actions. So I hope that the Premier will use his 5 minutes like he will do for every single question and talk about absolutely nothing to actually answer the questions. I encourage the Premier to earn his salary and the trust of all Manitobans. He should be supporting a Free Trade and Mobility Within Canada Act, the same act introduced by Nova Scotia and BC, to keep the momentum moving and grow Canada and Manitoba. Lots of questions to be asked. On that, I will come to the end of my closing remarks. I look forward to having a global discussion and getting some answers and some real information from the Premier. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
We thank the Leader of the Official Opposition for those comments. Under Manitoba practice, debate on the minister's salary is the last item considered for a department in the Committee of Supply. Accordingly, we shall defer consideration of line item 2.1A and proceed with consideration of the remaining items referenced in Resolution 2.1. At this time, we invite the minister's staff to join us at the table, and we ask that the minister introduce the staff in attendance. The Honourable First Minister.
Thank you, Chair. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Sarah Teely, who is the Clerk of the Executive Council, and to Mark Rosner, who is the Tories' worst nightmare.
Given that the estimates of Executive Council consist of only one resolution, the discussion will proceed in a global manner. The floor is now open for questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a point of order.
Just clarifying if the First Minister can clarify, is that the official job title of his staff that he introduced them as?
Not a point of order, but would the First Minister like to respond?
Well, what I was going to say...
The Honourable First Minister.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say is that this is not a point of order because there's no rule being cited nor any rule being broken. And in fact, the opposition leader would be free to ask this question when debate opens following the non-point of order that he's raised.
Thank you. The floor is now open for debate. The Honourable Member for Interlake Gimli.
On point of order.
On the point of order.
Yeah, obviously, it's a point of order. We can't refer to people as the Tories' worst nightmare when we're trying to, when he's introducing his staff. It should be his proper title, not some made-up title.
As previously mentioned, this is not a point of order, and I'd also like to note that the chair is not responsible for the quality or content of replies or questions. The floor is now open for debate. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Is time starting? Does time start on that? Honourable Chair? Thank you, Honourable Chair. And for those Manitobans watching can see that the complete disregard for respect, the immaturity of this Premier to introduce his Chief of Staff by that title, and then further to try to intimidate members here by shouting out the answer while we're trying to have a conversation. It's really shameless, disgusting actually. But regardless, let's put that aside and let's start off, like I said, with some normal questions. Let's start off high level. Let's try to just paint a picture of what the office of the Premier looks like, and then we can get back to some other questions. But just to really start off with here, can the Premier tell us what his MLA and Premier salary is when they are combined?
The Honourable First Minister.
Yeah, all this information has been tabled for the House and emailed to every MLA. as part of the members' allowance booklet or PDF, whether you're talking about that in electronic or in paper form. So I'll pause when copies of that document that's already been tabled are brought in so I can table them again. It's all public information. This is actually a question I get asked sometimes when I visit schools. How much do you get paid? So I say about $200K. It's online. You can look it up yourself. And then the kids typically do. They're able to do so. Right now, we are currently not earning our full salary as ministers, though. We get a ministerial holdback because we inherited a significant deficit from Heather Stefanson's government as the PCs. But we are on a path to balance, and I expect that all my colleagues will be able to get their ministerial holdback returned to them when we see the public accounts for the year, most likely around the time that the Q3 results are shared publicly. When we came into government and we saw the Q3 results for the member opposite and Heather Stefanson, we were shocked to see the amount that their failed election pledges actually cost the people of Manitoba. And we've been trying to repair that damage. At the same time, we fix healthcare and make life more affordable here in the province. I do want to take issue with some of the comments that the member opposite made to criticize the important steps that we're taking to help Manitoba businesses and industry right now. His predecessor, Brian Pallister, brought in tax deferrals in 2020 during the COVID pandemic, and every member of the PC team trumpeted this as an important step and an important way to help business. So of course, you know that these questions, coming as they do next to the member for Interlake Gimli, are obviously very partisan in nature. Tax deferrals were the best idea in the world at the time in 2020. But now that there's a new Democratic government with a mandate to help business, now they're the subject of critique. So the member opposite, you know, take it up with me, but take it up with Brian Pallister. I'd note Brian Pallister, we saw donated $2,000 to the PC party last year. I know the subject of donations is a hot topic in the PC caucus today, and from the scrums too, probably. But again, when you're calling to thank Brian Pallister, Honorable Chair, or rather to my colleagues, I would say, you know, calling to thank a donor, probably gloss over the critique of his former economic policy, I would think. And when you come to WCB premiums, Doug Ford issued a press release just a few weeks ago highlighting how their equivalent of the WCB is returning money to business in that province as a measure to support industry during this period of uncertainty. So if the members opposite and the PC caucus want to criticize the actions of Doug Ford, by all means, let me know what your thoughts are. I'll be speaking to him tomorrow. Actually, he's texting me right now. I'll probably speak to him later this evening. And I can let him know what the PCs are thinking here in Manitoba. He's obviously a different brand of conservative because he wins elections. But these members are, you know, still whatever it is that they're doing, choosing people with fewer votes and prioritizing non-donors to their party. So, you know, these are some of the things that I could share with them. But you look at Doug Ford, you look at Tim Houston, a lot of the great people that I get a chance to work with, whether they're conservatives, whether they're progressives, we work together for the good of the country. And we put you, the people, first. And when it comes to criticisms, we usually reserve those for Donald Trump, you know, and criticize him. Of course, you know, he's a big boy. He's no stranger to criticizing people as well, too. I definitely noticed some comments earlier today about one of the former federal ministers being made in the Oval Office, and so reached out to our counterpart there and just wished her well as well, too. And I think it's important that we are able to work together with all levels of government. So here's the salaries that I'll table, public document, publicly reported. Apparently, the tabling of this all fits into one grand design and scheme that the members opposite are working up here. But again, any school child can look this up on their phone. And I encourage Manitobans to know how much they're paying MLAs who in some cases haven't showed up for work for the past 6 months.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Beyond embarrassing that this Premier spent 5 minutes to answer that question when it takes 30 seconds. It's $200,000. It's a simple answer. That's all he has to say, move on instead of waiting time, but he's got his minions over here who want to laugh and support because that's what,
The Honorable First Minister on a point of order.
Yeah. I'll confess at the outset that this is not a point of order. But I just want to put on the record that I object to calling the head of the civil service in Manitoba a minion, and I object to calling the head of the political staff of the government of Manitoba a minion. And if the member opposite is serious about what he said in the House yesterday, I'd ask him to consider apologizing.
So as mentioned, that's not a point of order. Would you like to continue, Honorable? So the Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I was under the assumption from the Premier making up titles and calling his Chief of Staff the PC's worst enemy. We were in the habit of making up names here, so I apologize for that. But you know, we follow the Premier's lead, and that's what he did, so we follow after that. So $200,000 is the answer. That's all we're looking for, not a 5-minute preamble. So we'll get to the next question here, and Manitobans can see he'll waste another 5 minutes answering this question when he should have it at the tip of his fingers. Or like he said, any child with a phone can find it, 200,000. How much has your office, Premier, spent last year on travel? How much did you expense last year? And what are you projected to expend this year on travel?
The Honorable First Minister.
Thank you. I spent less than Brian Pallister and Heather Stephenson, who billed taxpayers to go to the Grey Cup, but I paid for myself. Just want to clarify if the member wants fiscal year or calendar year. He asked for last year. I can provide an answer, but just want to make sure if he wants January to January or if he wants April 1 to March 31.
The Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and I thank the Premier for actually answering that question quickly. And she's right, I'll clarify that question. For the fiscal year, please, Premier.
The Honorable First Minister.
I'm going to undertake to get an answer to that question for the member opposite with some important context that I don't have right now. Budget for next year, though, basically be similar to this one. The vast majority of the travel is for First Ministers meetings, Council of Federation, and Western Premiers Conference. This year, we're probably going to add some meetings with governors from the U.S. as well, too.
The Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I do want to recognize, and I want to thank the Premier for his answer on that. It wasn't 5 minutes. It was a concise, clear answer, and I really appreciate that, so we can move on to the next one. And I look forward to the tabling or the providing of the expenses for the for last year's expenses. So it's interesting that the Premier also mentions that reference, and I wasn't going to go on this or ask or reference, but then he mentioned himself, he felt like he needed to clarify the bomber trip, which is I don't know why he brought it up, but I mean, since you brought it up, I'll just ask him. You know, mistakes happen. Staff person attended, they billed it through the department, I believe, the Premier's office, and maybe the Premier can clarify that, and then they realized there's a mistake and they reimbursed it. These mistakes happen, not the end of the world. So I do understand that, and Premier's a Bomber fan, that's great. All Manitobans are as well, so I think it's great that and exciting that they're participating in the Grey Cup. What I would be remiss to ask, though, on just this matter here, is he said he paid for it himself. Can the Premier provide proof of payment where he's actually paid for this himself personally for this trip to the Bombers, and then we can put this matter to rest and move forward. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
The Honorable First Minister.
Yeah, this matters with the Conflict of Interest Commissioner, so I'll wait for him to come back. But I would say, you know, I wish what the member opposite said was true, that everyone in Manitoba is a Bomber fan. Unfortunately, I do travel some places in the West, and I see some green jerseys from time to time, and so I always have good-natured back and forth with whoever that is. But, you know, it's a big province. There's a wide range of opinions and views and teams that everybody's cheering for. Even when we go to the Jets games right now, you saw a couple St. Louis jerseys there the other night. So no accounting for 100%. I know that's not really what the member was conveying, but as a sports fan, I do want to just offer that observation.
The Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and it's a shame if someone lives in Manitoba and they're not a Bomber fan. I'd say that much, but there are those few here and there. I look forward to seeing that tabling by the Premier, and just to be clear, that the question was, can you provide a proof of payment, personal proof of payment that he paid for the tickets or the travel, which is great. If he did, and then we'll put this matter to hand. It is before the Ethics Commissioner. And we look forward to seeing that proof of payment so that this matter can go away. On another question when it comes to employment, I'll circle back to that. Can the Premier tell us who is employed currently in his Executive Council and the Premier's office, both political staff and senior civil servants? And can he please confirm the organizational chart in the supplemental estimates if the organizational chart in the supplemental estimates is complete and up to date as of today. Further to that, will the Premier provide the monetary increase from last year's budget to this year's budget, and if there's an increase, projected increase for 26, 27 for these positions listed above?
The Honourable First Minister.
Yeah, the amount that's paid to staff and executive council is consistent year over year. So all the staff listing, the organizational chart, and the other information that the member is asking for is accurate as of April 1, 2025. And so the org chart that he's asking for and the listing and all that stuff is going to be disclosed in the Executive Council supplementary appropriation books that he's making reference to in his question. And I can confirm for the committee that all that information is accurate as of April 1. I can go a step beyond April 1 and tell you that I think there have been 2 changes made since then, both on the civil service side. And these are just related to career advancement opportunities where people who were in a certain position in Executive Council have moved forward career-wise and are taking on other positions in the civil service. So you may see some changeover in terms of some of the names from April 1 to 2025 to April 1, 2026. But again, those are related to career advancement. That's not really any significant changing of roles or functions when we're talking about it from an HR perspective. In terms of the monetary side of what the member was asking there, the only monetary increases that are happening for any of these positions, whether civil service or political, have to do with the scale that people are on. And so those are the typical scales that are available to everybody in the public service as set out by GMA, the manual that the folks way smarter than me use to operate the government. And when we're talking about that, there was a funny situation when the PCs left office, actually, that I have to share with the members opposite, and their staff will enjoy this. Well, I find it very funny that the member for Steinbach and his crew in government actually didn't do the paperwork properly for PC political staffers in the former government under Heather Stephenson to qualify for the public service pension. And this was brought to our attention when we took office. Again, the member opposite from Fort White was part of that government as well, I'll say for the record. And so this was brought to us by, civil servants because, obviously there's a transition of many staff from the PC political staff complement leaving. And then we were hiring up the new government's political staff complement. And we were, pointed out that the people leaving would not have access to pension. So we actually brought forward the necessary changes so that the former PC political staff of the last government would be able to qualify for their pensions. So when we're talking about like partisanship and all that, yeah, obviously there is a lot of partisanship that goes on. But when it comes to people's pensions, like that's one of the things we believe in as New Democrats. That's your money, you earned it. It's money that you sort of gave up. It was foregone from taking home on your paycheck, and so you're entitled to it. So we didn't think it would be a good look to basically play games with PC political staffers' pension. Obviously, former government, I'm sure, just made some sort of oversight type of error or whatever it was. But anyways, we were fine with clearing that up, and we kind of had a chuckle along the way from the perspective of like, are we going to get a lot of political points for doing this? Are we going to get a lot of former PC political staffers being nice to us because we're doing the right thing, or not even the right thing, just doing the expected thing? I think that any Manitoban would expect us to do here. And we said, no, probably not, but we should do it anyways. So just some context for members on the committee to keep in mind when we're talking about compensation for people in the political staff arena.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Funny, but I missed it.
No, thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you for the brief for that. And there is a lot of partisanship that and jives that happen back and forth, and serious questions asked that are uneasy to answer. And then there's the questions like the Premier answered there, and I thank him for that answer. And if what he says claim to be true, then I thank him for that, and I have no reason to doubt that it's not. So that is the right thing to do. And I'd like to believe that myself as leader of the opposition would also, faced in that situation, would also do the same thing, because that is the right thing to do. On that note, this might be a longer question, so his staff might need to undertake this to provide it, and they can provide this at a later time if they like. Can the Premier please list out what political staff work out of the Premier's office or within the purview of that office? For all political staff, can you please list their names spoken aloud, or table it so that can be presented to this committee or committee here? Thank you.
The Honourable First Minister.
Sorry, there's just a bifurcated question there, so I just want to ask for clarification, which is like, so the question is, who works out of the Premier's office on the political staff side? Is that am I understanding that right? Okay.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Yeah, that's correct, Honourable Chair. So what political staff work out of the Premier's office or within the purview of the Premier's office?
The Honorable First Minister.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to confirm a couple of details regarding who in exec is a civil servant, because we do have in our org chart, as members opposite will see when they review it, that you have civil servants who do support work for some people on the political staff side. So with that in mind, all this information is going to be tabled in, it's going to be visible, I guess I should say, to the members opposite when they get around to reviewing the lists and charts that are part of the exec book, but might as well just put the information on the record so that those members have the information at their disposal. So the Chief of Staff is Mark Rosner. The Deputy Chief of Staff is Rebecca Whitcomb. Then we have the Principal Secretary, Emily Coots. Reporting to Emily, the Director of Strategic Government Communications is Lise Fenton. And our data person, Alicia Hill. Then doing photos and digital management is Rachel King. Then we have correspondence writer, Hannah Dredge. Then we have outreach appointments for Northern and Western roles, which are Jason Gobey, or I should do it in this order, Danelda Pronto and Jason Gobey, respectively. We have our HR Director, Larissa Ashdown. Yoshkabe Wis, the Special Assistant to myself, is Samantha Martin Bird. The Office Coordinator is Kelly Speak, and the EA on the political side is Janelle Manitowabi. So those are the political staff who are working in the Premier's office under order and council, for lack of a, I guess, more fulsome declaration. But like I said, this is all there publicly in the information that I said that's current as of April 1. It's current on the political side to today. When we speak in the committee here, as I flagged earlier, there'll be some changes on the civil service side eventually. But again, congrats to folks who are moving forward in their careers, and it's just kind of straightforward advancement kind of stuff there. We're getting T-shirts made.
The Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, that was his title. Thank you, Honorable Chair. It was PC's first name was on the table. Okay, thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank the Premier for that answer. I just want to go back because I was remiss. Sorry, I was thinking ahead to the next question. Was the Premier did commit to, I guess, waiting or tabling the ethics reports in regards to the Grey Cup travel expenses. I just want to confirm on the record that the Premier has committed to tabling and providing that proof of payment, personal proof of payment that for the Grey Cup, and what date that payment was done on personally, and who it was paid to.
The commissioner will table.
The commissioner. Will provide the proof of payment personally that he paid for the Grey Cup, that he has said numerous times on the record that he's done. He'll provide that proof of payment and when it was paid and who it was paid to.
The Honorable First Minister.
No, what I said is when the Conflict of Interest Commissioner brings this back, I'll return to the issue.
The Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So the Premier is not willing to provide proof of payment personally that he says he did for reimbursement of the Grey Cup on the tickets, on the flights, the date it was, and the amount and who it was paid to. So just want to clarify that the Premier is saying he will not provide that to Manitobans.
The Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition, would you be able to repeat your question, please?
I can definitely repeat the question for the third time. Just saying that the Premier has now said he's not going to provide the proof of payment. He's not going to table the proof of payment that he says he paid for the Grey Cup travel, the date it was reimbursed or paid back, and the amount.
The Honorable First Minister.
No, that's not true. What I said is that I'll return to this matter when the Conflict of Interest Commissioner provides his report.
The Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So will the Premier commit at that point to provide and table proof of payment for the Grey Cup travel, the date in which that payment was paid personally, and the amount and who it was paid to.
The Honourable First Minister.
So I'll return to this issue when the Conflict of Interest Commissioner provides his report. But what I will provide today is my personal guarantee that I paid for my own way to the Grey Cup.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and I thank the Premier for his answer. In regards to travel, when it comes to the Premier's office, can the Premier please clarify if all the travel that the Premier takes, is it billed through his office, or does he bill that or expense it through other ministerial offices? Or is it all through the Premier's office?
The Honourable. The Honourable First Minister.
Okay, so there's, I guess, two things to share with the member. So in terms of public disclosure, all of my information is reported publicly in the same place. So all the travel costs, it all comes out in the same place in terms of public disclosure. But the second thing that I want to share with the minister, just so that there's clarity in terms of how that process happens, in his opening statement, he acknowledged that I have a few titles as minister. So in addition to being president of the Executive Council, I'm also the Minister for Intergov and Indigenous Reconciliation. So in terms of the mechanics of it, if I'm doing a trip in the intergovernmental affairs capacity, it might be booked through IGA. If I'm traveling in a premierial capacity, attending an event, for instance, as a ribbon cutting type of event as premier, then that would be booked through exec. But I guess what I'm saying is regardless of the mechanics of how travel gets booked, whether it's through IGA or whether it's through the Premier's office, that is being disclosed publicly in the same place. So the number that gets posted online and that the members opposite and the public have access to, it includes both of that. That said, I gather when we travel with other ministers at the same time, they'll be reporting their information through their own departments because it's separate ministerial travel for those bookkeeping purposes. So hopefully that's helpful.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, Honorable Chair. That is helpful. Thank you. So just to clarify again, I'm not looking to get you in the aha moment, but to just clarify. So yes, you're right. You do wear a lot of hats, and that is a difficult task. Intergovernmental affairs, Indigenous affairs, and the Premier. Has there been a time in the past or incident where the Premier has traveled, and it would be a announcement or something to do with agriculture or another ministerial department? Would he ever have expensed those travel expenses through that ministerial department, or would it have just gone through the Premier or Intergovernmental Affairs, which is, I think, what he's saying, just to clarify. I think that's what he's saying, which is right.
The Honourable First Minister.
Yeah, the answer to the first part of the question is no. I haven't taken a trip that was booked to another department. And then the answer to the second part of the question is yes, the member opposite is hearing the answer right in terms of what I meant previously, that regardless of how travel gets divided between Executive Council or IGA, it's still going to be disclosed publicly in the same place, and that number is going to be all-inclusive of those expenses. When we're talking about that structure, from what I understand, this is like GMA that we referred to earlier. This is just like how we're supposed to conduct ourselves in office. We did have a bit of a challenge trying to stand up a system that was not in existence under the previous government. There was no proactive disclosure. It was a disclosure when the media asks about it kind of thing, which is kind of surprising to Manitobans. I remember reporters, from the press gallery were asking about this at the time, and we said, yeah, no, we had to stand up a system to ensure that there would be regular public quarterly reporting for ministerial travel. And at that time, I recall speaking not only to media about this, but also members opposite. And so I went out and got some advice, not on the question of public disclosure. I think everyone's in agreement that public disclosure needs to happen. But so fixing, I guess, the lack of attention to detail in the most charitable explanation that existed under the former progressive conservative government, fixing that detail on the face of it, that made sense. Of course, we were going to do that just in the interest of transparency for Manitobans. But I went out and talked to, I guess, some political experts who I won't name, but are, people that would be recognizable to the general public in terms of having some knowledge in these matters. And I just solicited their opinions, like, what do you think about all this stuff? And the answer that I heard back from them was, and I'm summarizing, not verbatim here, but I'm summarizing both the sentiment, the tone, and the message. What I heard back is, look, these trips have value or they don't. And so there's obviously a lot of headlines that get generated over, travel. I remember when this issue first arose, the comparison in the headline was comparing me to Brian Pallister. It was like almost as much as Brian Pallister or something like that. So obviously there's some whatever type of considerations going into the wording of that headline. But the reality that these, sort of people with a lot of expertise in the world of government had was, if you are going to a First Minister's meeting to advance Manitoba's interests on a significant public policy issue, that trip has value or it does not. If you're going to thank the veterans in Normandy for liberating Europe or to participate in that act of gratitude on behalf of Manitobans to keep that living memory alive for students in this province, then that trip has value or it does not. And if you're going to the Council of the Federation, so on and so forth. And I'm sure the members of the opposite understand this. So these are questions that we're providing answers to today. I'm sure we'll be providing answers to them again in the future because these are questions around transparency and disclosure, and Manitobans have a right to know this. But I do want to put the words on the record that the trips we take in government, as with governments across Canada, are trips that are valuable and serve a public interest. And so when we talk about these issues, I think it's important for us to keep that on the record, because we're looking at trips over the past year. They are trips to try and engage with the Trump administration, to try and work with premiers across Western Canada, to work with premiers from across every region of Canada, to work with governors in neighboring states. And so these are things that have a public interest, and I've made clear to folks on our team, we are to be very judicious and responsible with public resources. And when we travel, we need to make sure that we're balancing the public interest of attending something like a federal, provincial, territorial, Indigenous meeting with being here and responsive to the needs of our constituents or the responsibilities in the legislature. And at the same time, keeping an eye on what the public good and what the public interest is. So the trip to Normandy last year comes to mind as an example of something that's in the public interest. We're talking about the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and I think Manitobans took a lot of benefit from that anniversary, not only as a province, but also, I think, a sense of patriotism as well.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and thank the First Minister for that answer. And he is right. Traveling to Normandy is a sense of patriotism and pride in Manitoba to remember our veterans, and it must have been an honor for him to attend that on behalf of Manitobans and represent. There is a lot of other travel that happens within this building and ministerial roles. So a question, and we were on such a good flow of asking a question, taking a minute answering, and back and forth. And I hope we can get back to that, because none of these questions here are contentious questions. So just hopefully we can get back to that and not burn the 5 minutes. There are some harder questions coming up, which the Premier can take his time on those. This is a simple one procedure-wise. The previous BC government had started the process he talks about. It wasn't completed, but it was started. And, you know, prior to that, the 17 years of NDP, there was nothing, but we'll let that go. Ministerial travel. Who approves ministerial travel if the premier can say that? Is it executive council, is it chief of staff? When you look at trips like New York, where minister takes her staff, is it, or Houston, where the minister took a staff and accompaniment there, or is it the PC's worst enemy that approves that staff? Just curious as to who were, and what the process is for ministerial travel. And sorry, and further to that, and what requirements or parameters around that ministerial travel?
The Honourable First Minister.
Okay, so we're going to provide more transparency and answers. And I want to contrast this with my predecessors. With Brian Pallister, oh man, it was the whole afternoon, 5 minutes at a time. And, you know, we're hearing about how a field near Portage La Prairie should count as a solar panel in the eyes of the federal government, you know. And, well, of course, the member for Steinbach was there nodding his head the whole time for all those however many years until the Palace coup came for old Brian. And then he was the one left to hold the bag in the room 204. But we had a good time there. And then Heather Stephenson. We come to estimates with Heather Stephenson. I don't know. You go ask the minister. I don't know. Go ask the minister for entire afternoons, right? And it'd be like, so what do you actually do as a premier if it was just go ask the minister for everything? Anyway, so sharp contrast, of course, not necessarily in the partisan sense of contrast messaging, but just contrast to approach to the estimates process for exec council. So with that context, important context for the committee out of the way, I would say the answer to the member's question is this. There is a formal approval process that happens, but also there is a back and forth, a political consideration, public interest consideration, and a dialogue between ministers in our government who are empowered to identify the things that they want to work on, but also need to ensure that there's alignment with our team and the various responsibilities that we have. So again, what does that mean in practice? There is a formal process where if a minister wants to go through on a trip, and I'm peeling back the curtains here, so take the notes and hold us to this in the future whenever there's some trip that the opposition wants to focus on. But there is a formal process where ministers, and this is really about budgeting, so we're not seeing the things that we used to see under the PCs with just expenses not being disclosed until the media asks. So there's a formal process where basically the cost of the trip gets signed off on, the purpose of the trip gets signed off on. But at the same time, while there is paperwork to cover this formal approval process, we're a team, right? And I've made clear to the folks around the cabinet table, as well as the caucus table, that I'm going to steer, I'm not going to row. And when it comes to your departments and to the teams you run, I want you to steer and not row, which means set direction, ensure proper oversight, exercise all your strengths as a manager, but don't fall into the trap of micromanagement. And what that means in the context of travel is that our ministers are empowered to come forward and say, this FPT is really important for me to attend. A good example of that might be the recent flurry of federal provincial trade meetings on internal trade in Manitoba and across Canada. And then the dialogue, the back and forth, the political public interest consideration that I'm talking about comes into effect when it's well, yes, it is important for you to attend the FPT on internal trade. However, we have a confidence vote in the House during that time. And so can you attend virtually? Can you attend through some other virtual means? Or can we just make it up at some future dates? And so through that process, all those eventualities have been encountered so far. Sometimes ministers and our team collectively have decided to sit out certain opportunities. Other folks might attend on their behalf. For instance, I get invited to COP, the big climate conference, every year. I don't attend. I haven't so far. Perhaps in the future I will. But we have had civil servants attend because it fits in with the purview of the Environment and Climate Change Department. Similarly, we've had members say, yeah, no confidence vote or some other presence in question period. It's important, so I'll sit this meeting out. On the other hand, at other times, we've said, no, you know what, this is important, so we all agree that you should attend the FPT and advance Manitoba's interests at that. A notable example, I can share a specific one in my next answer if there's interest with the committee.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and I'm going to start off with the Premier's opening comments. He referenced Brian and Heather talking at 5 minutes nauseum about fields or solar panels and not answering questions. I mean, the Premier has just spent 5 minutes, and just because he does it with a lovely smile and some great language and words and descriptions, and he's a good storyteller, we need some answers. There's no difference here between him and Brian and Heather. Might as well put them all together now. Because he's still spending 5 minutes not answering the question. So the question was simple again. Understand he says there's a formal process. Will the Premier be willing to table that formal process for the committee to see? The question was who signs off on ministerial travel? Who is the final person that signs off? No one's arguing the importance of traveling to an FPT or importance of travel within the department. It's not the argument. The question is simply, what is the formal process? Will he table it, and who signs off on that final travel?
The Honourable First Minister.
It's unnecessary to table because I've just described it in great detail for the members. In terms of the formal sign-off, that comes from the Tories' worst nightmare, the Chief of Staff, and the Clerk of the Executive Council. But like I said, it's a group decision that is taken with respect for the agency and the empowerment that the ministers have to row and also steer their respective departments. But We also ensure that there is a balance of considerations for legislative responsibilities here in the House, for other responsibilities here in Manitoba. So here's a good example that I'd like to share with the committee, is that, you know, some of the best storytellers I know are educators. And so this is a story about the Minister of Education and early childhood learning. And so we had an FPT for, you know, the minister is also the member for Rossmere. And we were talking about the fact that at the time there was a fiscal cliff for the provision of childcare in Manitoba. There was that deadline we could see in the horizon where the cost shared agreement with the federal government was going to come to an end. This is still when Justin Trudeau was the prime minister. Same Justin Trudeau who's in a photo with the member opposite in a selfie when the prime minister had his blackface controversy. There was a message of support shared by the member opposite. And the Minister of Education went to the FPT, and with Prime Minister Trudeau, I guess, coming to the end of his time in office and wanting to maybe conclude a few more items of business, our Minister of Education actively advocated for her ability to attend this FPT. And so, okay, sure. If you're going to go to this FPT, can we try and address the fiscal cliff? The idea that, you know, $10 a day daycare in Manitoba might disappear a few years in the future if we don't come up with some renewed agreement. So I'm very proud of the fact that the minister went to that FPT, put this item on the agenda, which at the time it was Minister Suds, I believe, her federal counterpart, wasn't even trying to talk about at that meeting. And really, this an example of Manitoba playing a leadership role at the federal level. And from that agenda-setting presence at that FPT just a few months back, a flurry of negotiations followed. And not only was Manitoba the beneficiary, but many other provinces across the country were the beneficiaries of our Minister of Education's advocacy and the fact that there was somebody willing to play ball on the federal side of the table there. And we concluded a new agreement, billions of dollars to be invested in childcare alongside the federal government in the coming years here in Manitoba. So again, to the question about ministerial travel and these trips having value or they not having value, to me, that's a trip that had a lot of value. A minister traveled to an FPT and she brought home the bag. And that bag had support for kids and families for many years to come in Manitoba. And I think that was an excellent example of advocacy on behalf of a minister.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and maybe the Premier heard me wrong. There was not a question of the value of ministers going on trip. We agreed that there is value. So I don't know why the Premier had to spend 4 minutes and just go over that when we agreed there is value in them going. It's clear the Premier, unfortunately, has resorted back to his old ways of kicking the puck down or shooting the puck down the ice now, I guess you can say, with the Jets. So let's try to reset again, Honorable Premier, and maybe answer the question in not 5 minutes, maybe within a minute. What is the vacancy rate within your departments, Executive Council, Intergovernmental and International Relations, and Indigenous Reconciliation? How many staff does each area employ? Do you have a target vacancy rate within those areas? And if you'd be willing to table that or provide that information today.
Before I acknowledge the First Minister, I'd like to take a moment to remind all honourable members that on both sides to address their questions through the chair. The Honourable First Minister.
Yeah, so I'm going to undertake to provide some answers to the questions that have been posed here. I will say in terms of public disclosure, all of this will be reflected in the Executive Council material that I was referring to earlier in terms of the exec staff positions that the member is asking about. And the way government is structured, Indigenous reconciliation and intergovernmental affairs are both housed within the finance department. And so the staff positions there will be reflected in the finance estimates books. So we'll provide some detail when I return with the undertaking about what those positions entail. I can tell you that we have vacancies. I was looking at them recently in the Indigenous Reconciliation Secretariat. And it's an interesting balancing act, trying to repair the damage of years of PC government in Manitoba. Because on the one hand, you've got all these vacant positions, people you could hire to do really important work, advancing reconciliation in Manitoba, with the example of this secretariat in mind. But on the flip side, we inherited this massive deficit. And we have to be conscientious of every single decision that we make. And so there is a robust process in place to ensure that even in the areas under my purview, such as the Indigenous Reconciliation Secretariat or the civil servants who work in the IGA branch or in the Executive Council, that those things go through Treasury Board and, a rigorous process of, holding them up to the light and saying, yeah, this sounds like a great hire, but can we afford to do this right now as the province of Manitoba? Is this the most efficient use of resources right now with the big priority on health and the economy, making it more affordable? Should we devote those resources to those areas? Again, billions of dollars more invested in the healthcare system since we've taken office. Significant, important, but also relevant that when we need to take a global view. Again, the questions we get asked in a scrum, and I pointed this out to a member of the media not too long ago, we get the questions in the scrum of like, oh, why didn't you fund this, or why didn't you fund that, or why didn't you do this and all that? But the answer is like, well, that's not the way the issues come forward to us in government. When Heather Stephenson and the member opposite were there, it was just like yes to everything and no global view of the province's finances, and that's how you rack up well, they decided to stand firm against a landfill surge. But in that final 6 months, $2 billion were racked up. They said yes to everything, except, of course, the compassionate humanitarian thing to do. And won't dwell on PGL, Prairie Green Landfill, but do have to point that out before members get too vocal with their critique here in the commission. So yeah, there's vacancies. We're trying to be very judicious about filling them because we like the civil service too. The civil service breathed a sigh of relief after the torturous years of overbearing Brian Pallister and an underperforming Heather Stephenson time in office to find people who are serious about the job and wanting to work collaboratively to make Manitoba a better place. And so I'm very, very mindful of the fact that not only the civil servants, but also their labor organizations that represent them are saying we need to staff up, we need more help to do all this work that we're doing. And the role that we have as overseers of government, as the elected officials representing the people of Manitoba, is to say, yeah, no, it all sounds good, but we got to make sure that we're making the right investment decisions here. And the member opposite is waving his hands and trying to get attention, but one of the things that I noticed about coming into the Premier's office is that I learned from my predecessors. Brian Pallister, I learned a lot from him. The vast majority of it was what not to do. But I would just encourage the member opposite to have some patience and keep his eyes and ears open, because there may be some things to learn along the way too. And so I'll just share those few words of encouragement to my colleague across the way.
The Honorable
You would know.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you to the Premier to that. And I wasn't sure if he was referring to myself or the member from Steinbach, so I would remind the member from Steinbach to keep his ears and eyes open so he can learn some things from the
Always listen.
current Premier and what not to do. So I think that, I'll take that advice under serious advisement, and I hope what he's saying what not to do is burn 5 minutes in committee when he can answer the question in a minute. I hope that's what he's referring to. I'm assuming he learned that from maybe his mentor, Greg Sellinger, or other mentors maybe that he learned from. But I think it's clear what not to do is waste 5 minutes. I think he made a very good point of that. So I will learn that from the Premier, not to waste 5 minutes here. We'll move on to another area, international relations. So this Premier is committed to opening a new full trade office in Washington, D.C. last year. Can the Premier please provide the address of this trade office, the names of the staff hired at the office, what is the budget for this office, what is the salary for the staff hired at the office, how much has been spent so far at this office, and what does this Premier project will be spent this year and projected for next year in this office? A lot of questions. Thank you.
The Honorable First Minister.
Yeah, a lot of questions, but it'll take more of that patience on behalf of the member to get the answers, because of course we're going to roll things out when we do the big announcement of our big hire. But it will interest the members opposite. They may remember that at the State of the Province address last year, I made this announcement, and among the qualifications, somebody who's one of our best in Manitoba, somebody who can make the case to Americans that trade with Manitoba is good for the U.S. and is good for our province at the same time. I also said that I wanted somebody who was a little Trumpy. And you would be amazed how many Conservatives came out of the woodwork to apply for the job. I mean, some of the people that sitting across the table I know are going to be asking for donations from, or asking for work from our government. And they were, willing to, just talk up the MAGA cred, or, the whatever goes into making somebody Trumpy. Yeah, there wasn't a ton of partisanship on display there. We were fielding calls from a lot of dyed-in-the-wool Conservatives who were jumping at the chance to represent Manitoba in D.C. and in the United States of America. Which, when you think about it, it really does beg the question, why then did the PCs close that office and end the presence of Manitoba in D.C.? We used to have a voice for our province in the U.S. Now, we saw this issue coming. We made an announcement with Gary Dewar in the 2023 campaign, and we said, you know what, we need to work on the American relationship. Whether it's Biden or Trump or some other president, this relationship is going to need a lot of work. We saw where the puck was going. Again, at the time, we didn't necessarily know what Wayne Gretzky's, political affiliations would be, but we were still happy to use his metaphors and his quotes. Still are to this day, I would say. But yeah, it really begs the question. Are we going to keep getting the accountability questions for fixing the damage of what the PCs did? Because, I mean, if that's the nature of the estimates committee and the member opposite wants to hector me about taking the time to explain our position on these issues, I would point out, what are we doing in the committee? All this information is available online or in publicly disclosed documents. You're spending an afternoon of important government time asking us questions that are already available to people in Manitoba. So again, you want to complain about time spent in the committee where I'm explaining in great detail to members, sure. But take a look at the questions you're being fed by your staff team. All this information is on the public record and will be provided to you in due course. So if we're looking at expediency here, let's get to the vote. Let's wrap it up. Let's move on. But if you want to take time here, then let's take time. Let's hear about the closures of the ERs. Let's hear about the failures during the pandemic. Let's hear about the inability to not even have a strategy when it comes to the economy, but even to focus on one aspect of the economy, be it U.S. relationships, agriculture, intellectual property. There was just so many failures during the PC time in office. And I recognize that the member opposite is going to try and put a a one Manitoba spin on the same old PC policies, but it just doesn't work. Like, you can't take progressive ideas and apply that message to regressive tactics. Like, it's not going to come off as authentic to the people of Manitoba. So I guess, what am I saying in a roundabout way? I'm offering political advice. But I'm also saying, if we're going to spend this special time together, then let's enjoy the journey. Let's take time to stop and smell the roses. We can just be here tabling and undertaking documents all day long, but I'd much rather, just explore together. What is it that makes Budget 2025 so amazing and magnificent? And why is it that the PCs vote against more law enforcement and more healthcare and more affordability measures? Doesn't make sense to me. But, I'm sure they'll have something in an email later on to send to their members who are still wondering why they voted for Wally and what happened to him and why he didn't win with more votes.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Honorable Chair. Look, we're going on a journey here. It's great. The Premier just answer the questions. You can talk, he's talking. It seems to have lightened the mood in here today, which is always nice. These are just simple questions, though. So, from what I hear, the Premier has said that when they have this big announcement, they will be providing us with all of the information that we asked for. So I thank the Premier for committing to that.
When's the big announcement?
Of the where the office is. I mean, he says it's on public record. I haven't seen it anywhere. There's public address for the trade office in Washington, D.C. I haven't seen the address publicly listed. Premier says it's listed publicly somewhere. I think you might want to fact check that. The names, the staff hired, budget. Man, these are real questions. I know he's having fun and enjoying this journey. We are part of it. It is part of the process. This is part of the process, man. If he doesn't have that yet, you can simply state, we don't have it yet, and when it is ready, we will table it for you. Because Manitobans have a right to know that. And that's a simple answer. Respectfully, he can just move on to the next point. He's choosing not to do that. It's unfortunate. He wants to make jokes and laugh. So, the Premier, I'll give you another, just another simple question. And if he doesn't have it, he can simply state he doesn't have it, and he will provide it, table it at a later date, which is fine. I'm sure other Premiers have done that in the past. So the question is, has the Premier hired any external advisors, consultants? If so, can you please provide the names, the roles, and how much they are paid?
The Honourable First Minister.
Yeah, Gary Dewar is our advisor on U.S. trade, and he has insisted that we not pay him anything. So it's a non-monetary arrangement, and holy cow, are we getting a good deal. We're talking about the best political mind that the province has ever known, and we're getting that for less than the $1 that the former government was paying Sandy Riley to advise them on hydro. And so that's a heck of a deal. And so Mr. Dewar has been very helpful in giving us a lay of the land in DC and helping to make connections. One of the great things about working with the former Premier and former ambassador for Canada to the U.S. is that when he walks into the room, you got senators jumping out of their seats. Gary, remember the time we had that Coors Light in Montana, right? And so it's just a level of familiarity and relationship building that we're able to use as Manitobans and to advance the province's interest, which is really, really great. And like I said, part of the genesis of this idea of working together and having Mr. Dewar give us strategic advice, but also help broker some conversations with influential people in America, was the understanding that the relationship with the U.S. was going to be very, very important. And so during the 2023 campaign, where the members opposite were deciding to run against the landfill search or to run against parental rights or whatever their position was on the matter, we were saying, you know what, why don't we focus on the economy and the relationship with our most important trading partner? Here we are in 2025 with President Trump in office. I think Manitobans made the right choice to elect a government that was focused on U.S. trade and trying to safeguard our economic interests rather than resorting to wedge politics. I think that's something we can all agree on. And when we're talking about advice, we're really lucky to get a lot of advice from folks who are not paid by the government. Other than hockey with the Winnipeg Jets, we probably get more free advice than anyone in Manitoba. And the members opposite who were in government probably remember their time as well too. A lot of unsolicited advice, I'm sure, that they received over the years too. Don't close the ER, things like that. But we listen and we try to, I guess, make the most of the good advice that comes our way. Some of that comes in formal meetings. Some of that comes informally when you're bumping into somebody at, a hockey rink or at an evening event or what have you. And sometimes it even comes from the members opposite. I have appreciated when members of the PC caucus have pulled me aside and said, hey, there's this local issue and, wouldn't mind if you could look into it. And yeah, we do our best to try and follow up on that. And I think there is a member statement given by one of them this week actually related to one of those examples that comes to mind. And so hopefully we can continue to listen to everybody. In the recent federal election, of course, I took meetings with the federal leaders of the Conservatives, of the NDP, of the Liberals for exactly that purpose. I want to hear advice from all sides of people who may have leadership roles at the federal level, and I want to advocate for Manitobans with all people who have the opportunity to lead at the federal level. And so I might be a card-carrying member of the NDP and elected as an NDP MLA, but I'm not the premier for New Democrats. I'm the premier for all Manitobans. And I want to make sure that whether you vote Conservative or NDP or Liberal at the federal level, that you have a voice, including at the provincial level too, those different ways that you vote, that we're going to take good advice seriously. And what's the proof of that? Well, look at all the major Crown boards. We've kept Conservative appointees on all of them. And even though people typically get shown the door immediately, I thought it was important for institutional memory and continuity of operations. So when you look at the Hydro, you look at the MPI, you look at the MBLL boards, you will find that we kept people who were appointed under the previous government that we thought had good ideas and good advice, because we want the good ideas to come forward no matter who people donate to or who people vote for, because we're one Manitoba.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Chair, Honorable Chair. Question, and that's so the Premier mentions Gary Doer. So the question is, are there any? Can he list them all? We don't need to go through question by question. This question is simple. Can he list all or any others and list all of the outside external consultants hired, whether for $0 like Gary Doer, who donates his time, or for a fee, by the Premier's Office, Executive Council to provide advice or do work for the Premier and Executive Council. That's names, roles, and contract or salary paid to these people. Will the Premier provide that list in its entirety?
The Honourable First Minister.
Yeah, the answer is no to paid consultants brought in under exec. We have, again, a great unpaid advisor, Gary Doer, who's helping us with the IGA side of things. The other consultants that our government has worked with would have been hired under departments. So for instance, the report that MNP put into the financial disaster that was the dying days of the Heather Stephenson administration That was contracted out
Order, please.
of
Order,
finance.
order, please. The hour being 5 o'clock, committee rise.
Good chair.